Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our discussion on the various methods of recording payments for your vendor deposits, invoices, and operating expenses in Design Manager. My name is Brad, and I'll be hosting the demonstration. If you have questions during the webinar, feel free to enter them into the questions pane under GoToWebinar panel. If the question is outside of the scope of today's discussion, please email them to support@designmanager.com. And lastly, if you miss a portion of the webinar or want to review any of our past discussions, go to our YouTube channel at Design Manager Inc., Design Manager INC. And here you can see a listing of all of our quick start videos, short helpful tutorials, and then all of our longer, more comprehensive webinars in our project management courses, accounting courses, and then all of the topics are available for you as well under the weekly webinars. Okay. Today we'll be discussing recording the payments for your bills and deposits after they've been entered, or even while entering them, quite honestly. We will not, however, be really reviewing the intricacies of actually recording your deposits and expenses and invoices, except as it applies to entering the payments, as we've already covered these extensively in other webinars, including our Accounting Course 5, Vendor Invoices, and Accounting Course 7, Reimbursable and Operating Expenses. So again, you can review those on our YouTube channel at your leisure. Generally, we'll be recording payments into one of our checking or banking accounts or our credit card accounts. So to get started, let's review in creating one of each. First, let's create a new checking account. Let's imagine that we have a new Bank of America checking account from which we want to start recording payments out of. To make a new account, we go to our Accounting tab, go to the General Ledger frame, and click the Accounts button to get to our account glossary. We can already see right at the top, we already have an existing cash checking asset account with the number of 10,010, which is appropriate in the accounting nomenclature for assets, as all of your banking institution accounts will be assets. So let's go ahead and add let's add our account immediately beneath our cash checking account. So we'll use a number of 10,020 perhaps. So to do so, we'll click Add. We'll input that 10,020. Remember, all of your account numbers have to be unique, of course. The name, let's call it very simply Bank of America Checking. The account type, as I just mentioned, is an asset. But to distinguish our checking or other financial institution accounts from our other assets, like our inventory or work in process or equipment or furniture, there's a specialized version of the asset, which is the asset bank checking. And upon selecting that account type, we have a lot of additional information that we can optionally enter. First, we have fields for both our bank number and checking account number. Now, those are completely optional, and they're only used for your reference. So if you need some place to put in that information, it's a great spot to put it into your account window if you so desire. To the right of that is the closed as of end of fiscal month option. Now, obviously, we're entering a new account, so we wouldn't want to close it. But if you did have an account that you wanted to discontinue that had activity in it previously, you could select a desired fiscal period, and Design Manager will prevent any transactions from going into that account after the selected fiscal month. You could still enter information in prior or including the closed fiscal month, but nothing be entered prior to that. So you're basically locking the account after that particular fiscal period. Now, we have a few entries here for our positive pay, including the file creation type and the file location. Now, what is positive pay? Well, it's an automated fraud detection tool offered by the cash management departments of many banking institutions. It's a service that matches the account number, check number, and dollar amount of each check presented for payment to the bank against a list of checks previously authorized and issued by your company. All three components of the check must match exactly or would not be paid by the bank. Essentially, you're providing a file to the banking institution. As checks come in for payment, they're going to cross-reference them there. Now, Positive Pay requires your company to transmit this file of all the checks that you wrote from that bank on a given day. When those issued checks are presented, as I said, to payment, they're compared electronically against those transmitted checks. The file that gets sent to your bank, in other words, the Positive Pay file itself, it has the check number, account number, the issue date, and dollar amount, so the bank can adequately verify all of those pieces of data. When a check is presented that does not have a match in the file, it becomes let's call it an exception item. The bank then sends a fax or an image of that exception item back to your company. Then you can review it and either determine that it is fraudulent and you want it blocked, or to go ahead and let it process through. So the file creation, now unfortunately, there's no standardized format for the Positive Pay file. So we've implemented many formats from a lot of various banking institutions and continue to add them as they become available. So we would probably select Bank of America. Next is the file location. Basically, when Design Manager creates that cross-reference Positive Pay file, where do you want it located so then you could transmit it to the bank? And lastly, you have the option to include voided checks in there. So if a check was voided and then it's presented for payment from the bank will obviously make that an exception item and say, hey, someone is trying to cash a voided check. And lastly, whether or not to include hand checks or checks you wrote out manually in that Positive Pay as well. So it's a very interesting fraud protection service that many banks offer and can be implemented within Design Manager. Okay. Now, if we click OK to save our account, we're going to be asked, hey, since you added an asset bank checking account, would you like Design Manager to create a payment type at this time? What does that mean? Well, an accounts receivable payment type is a convenient mechanism that allows you to name or classify a method of payment from your client, so the funds are easily directed to the proper account. For example, with our new Bank of America checking account, perhaps we're going to configure the ability to receive wire transfers, and all of those wire transfers from our various clients are automatically going to be directed to our new account. So if we go ahead and hit yes, we can create a POS or accounts receivable payment type. Let's call it wire so we can easily identify it as the funds are coming in. Our new Bank of America checking account is already and logically selected as our checking account on the checking account menu. The data collection. You have a few options here. Are the funds coming in going to be checks usually? Or are there going to be credit cards from our clients? Or generic, basically other forms of cash receipts mechanisms like wire transfers or cash. And lastly, there's a very specialized option of data collection called merchantware. Now, if you have a merchant account with our credit card processing partner, Cayenne, you can allow a payment type to be designated to accept credit card information, either by swiping or manually entering in the information, to be processed through Cayenne's secure merchantware gateway. And doing so will automatically both record the cash receipt and Design Manager and process the credit card transaction through the merchantware gateway so the funds can be transferred right into your banking account as soon as possible. And we'll just leave generic for our wire transfer. Then there's two other options. First, receipts will first appear in undeposited funds. In other words, a bank deposit needs to be made. What happens in this case is if we select that option, our receipts will go into our undeposited funds asset account until we actually go and process a deposit slip within Design Manager, whereby the receipt transactions are then moved out of undeposited funds into the appropriate asset bank checking account. Now, since wire transfers never need to be you never have to deposit anything, it's going to be automatically recorded into your checking account. We don't need that option. And the last is exclude from point of sale, exclude from POS. Basically, this option would prevent this particular payment type for wire transfers from being selected when a user is entering in a point of sale invoice through your accounts receivable point of sale system. Generally, a wire transfer wouldn't be appropriate there. It's more often credit card or check, of course. So that might be an option we would select in our case. And if we click OK, we've created not only our brand new Bank of America checking account, but also if we look at our company information and settings window, AR and showroom tab, we can see our brand new wire transfer payment type, and it's already associated with our Bank of America checking account. For more information on deposit slips, accounts receivable or point of sale payment type, etc., check out our recently updated Accounting Course 4 Receiving Payments webinar, again, on our YouTube channel. And there it is. Okay. Now, let's say that we transferred some money out of our existing checking account into the new Bank of America account. Let's basically fund our account. And you can easily do so by going to your Accounting tab, Accounts Payable frame, click on your Checkbook and Reconcile button. And if you look along the bottom left corner, we have an option for transfer. By selecting our transfer button, we get to our transfer cash window. And we say transfer money from. What is the source account? Well, great, that is our cash checking account. And transfer money to. In other words, what is the destination account that's going to be receiving the funds? So we would select our new Bank of America checking account. Today's date, the date of the transfer, is fine for our example. The fiscal period, that's going to be the month on your balance sheet that would reflect the transfer itself. The transaction description, we default that to transfer, but you can elaborate or change that if you wanted to. How about transfer to new checking account? And lastly, of course, the amount. Let's say it's an even $3,000. If we go ahead and click OK, we're always warned to confirm that we want to process the transfer. And if we click yes, we can see first in our existing cash checking account, we're creating a payment or reducing that account by $3,000. And then if we look at our brand new Bank of America checking account, we can see the funds have come in as a deposit, and we now have a balance of $3,000 in our new account. Okay, that's our brand new asset bank checking account. Let's go ahead and create the other convenient way of recording payments in Design Manager, a credit card account. So we'll jump back over to our accounts glossary. And as we saw with our original cash checking account, we also have an American Express liability account that we've created in the past. And we use the account number of 20,100 for American Express, which is appropriate for a liability account. So we'll go ahead and use the number of 20,200. Click Add to get back to our account window. And we'll go ahead and input our new account number. And let's say we have a new Visa account with Amazon. Just like we had an asset and asset bank checking designations, we have our liability and liability credit card options. So for our Amazon Visa, we would select the liability credit card to differentiate that from our other liability accounts, like our accounts payable account or our sales tax accounts. And when we do, we can see some additional information on this version of the window as well. First, the credit card number, again, totally for your reference. Design Manager does nothing with that number, and you can, of course, leave it blank. But we do need to enter a credit card payee. In other words, we need to enter an existing vendor to which we're going to remit payment for our Visa purchases. We can go ahead and use our Visa to pay all of our bills and invoices, etc. But eventually we're going to have to pay the Amazon Visa processing company to remit payment back. Now, just to keep us on a nice tight schedule, I've already created a vendor for our American Express Visa. So we'll go ahead and use that as our credit card payee. And there we go. And we can go ahead and just leave our credit card number blank, as I've discussed already. If we click OK, there's our brand new liability credit card account for our Amazon Visa. Now, one thing I do like to do is, once we've created that credit card account, is to go back to our credit card vendor, edit them, click on the Defaults tab, and associate our new credit card account with our expense account on the Vendor Window Defaults tab. Doing so will make it very convenient and foolproof when we go to pay our Amazon Visa company to use the right account. So we'll always be reducing or paying off that liability that we've been accumulating into our credit card account. And there we go, just that easy. Okay, great. So now we have our new accounts created. So let's move on to actually paying some of our outstanding bills. And we'll begin with one of the most conventional ways, printing a check to our vendors. To do so, we would go to our accounting tab, focusing on our accounts payable frame, and we go to the payments and checks window. This window is a listing of all the bills, operating expenses, and deposits that we've entered, yet not indicated payment for. This is also known as your accounts payable and can be reviewed by using the Aged Accounts Payable report, which if you go to your accounts payable reports, you can see the Aged Accounts Payable as one of the first options under the Accounts Payable folder. And I've actually joined it to my favorites tree by clicking the Add to Favorites button so I can access it easily in the future. And if we print that report just as an example, we can see all of the exact same entries that were shown on our payments and print checks window. Okay, great. Now, printing checks is quite simple. All you need to do is tag or select the bills and invoices for which you want to generate a check. So if we can begin to select our bill for Baker Century, we can see that our selected total automatically is increasing to reflect the amount of the total amount of invoices and bills that we've been selecting. We can also use our tag button in the lower left corner. Now, if we're inputting our payment due dates when we're recording our invoices and deposits, we can use the tag button to select all the payables that are due on or before a certain date. So if I click the tag button, and let's say we want to get everything that is due by the end of July, we could just put in 7/31, click OK, and notice any entry with a payment due date of July 31st or earlier has automatically been selected for us. Now, in certain situations, you may be paying for an expense or an invoice in installments. In those cases, you can use the Edit button in Design Manager to tell how much of the bill you are currently paying. It's also a handy way to record a discount from a vendor if one is offered for the bill or invoice in question, and you can even review or input any accounts payable notes as well. So let's say that we're only going to be paying half of what we owe Baker on the current invoice. We would select it on our Payments and Print Checks window, click the Edit button, and that gets us to our Edit Amount to Pay and Notes window. So if we're going to pay half of our $14.50, that will be $7.25 if my math holds. And we can even input a note here. I'll use our date feature and say first of 2 payments. If we click OK, we can then see that our original amount, of course, maintains $14.50, and our current amount to pay is going to be $7.25. And I can even conveniently see the note that I just added as well. All right, so let's print some checks for these bills. We already have our payables selected with our tag column, and all we have to do is click the checks button. That gets us to our check run window, and here, if we do have multiple bank checking accounts, which we do in our case, we'd have to select the appropriate one on our checking account window. Let's do a few trials here. So if we select our original cash checking account of 10,010, we can see that Design Manager is automatically going out and defaulting the next check number. Design Manager knows that I've already used checks 10,000, 10,001, etc., and is crafting the check numbers for me, starting with check number 10,008. If we used our brand new Bank of America checking account, it's going to default 00001 for us. There is no check account that it could default towards. And if our list of checks has a beginning number, let's say it started at 00500, we would just input that. And upon tabbing through, Design Manager changes the check numbers for each of the checks automatically as well. Now let's go back and we'll print our checks from our original checking account. What other information is listed for us? Well, we have the check date. That's going to default to the current date, of course, but you could change it if necessary. The fiscal month, that's going to be the period in which we're going to be reflecting the payment being made on our financial statements. We're going to generate one check per payee. So if I had multiple bills to FedEx or Phillips Jeffries, etc., they'd be consolidated on a single check. Just for your convenience and reference, we have the checking account balance listed for us and our check run total. From here, I could print a journal of our disbursements or check posting list if desired. And I'm going to see all of our checks listed, the amount of the invoices, any discount, the check amount, and a convenient account summary, along with the total number of checks as well. And many firms will print this out for a controller review or just for their own records prior to actually processing the checks. If we're ready to go ahead and truly print our computer checks, we'd click our Print Post button, which gets us to our Print Check window. I'd be very careful to make sure that my printer is the correct printer being associated with our checking, and the Design Manager will remember the last printer you selected when printing and accepting a check run. So if you use a different printer for your checks, Design Manager will always remember that for you. I would ensure that my checks are, of course, in the print device itself. And if we click OK, I like to always go to our print preview window first. Let's make this a little bit larger. There we go. Now, this is the actual check form itself. In this case, I'm using the middle format. Our preferred document company is Nelco. They provide all of our document forms in Design Manager, including your checks, deposit slips, etc. And this is their middle format, crafted to print perfectly on those forms from Nelco. So the check would be printed in the middle of the document itself, and then we have a stub along the top and another one on the bottom, one for us and one from the vendor. And then you can see each of the checks themselves. So now I would truly print out the checks onto the printed check forms themselves. Once that process has completed successfully and I've got all the checks in my hand, I would close my print preview window for the checks, and I'm always asked to accept or reject the run. If I reject, let's say the printer got jammed or something along those lines, I could then regenerate. But if I'm satisfied with the printing, we just clicked accept. And all of our two entries for Philip Jeffries and FedEx have dropped off our payments and print checks window. But our Baker entry now says the original amount was $14.50. We've already paid $7.25, and it's defaulting the next amount to pay to that second half of $7.25 as well. And then on our checkbook window, we can see our 3 checks listed in sequential order on today's date. A few other points here. I mentioned the check forms from Nelco. If we go back to our company information window, advance to the company advanced options, on our print tab, I'm defining which of the formats I want to use with the check position option, and I'm using that middle check format. I also have options for top check format. In that case, the check would be on the top, followed by a stub, and then a second stub in the middle and bottom, or the bottom, which of course would be stub, stub, and the check will print on the bottom as well. So whatever check format you prefer, you can purchase and select and tell Design Manager how to use it. There's also another option for the trim printer alignment. Let's say that when you print the checks, the printing is just a bit high or low. You can use the trim printer alignment to move the printing on the check format itself up or down, in other words, vertically, using that format. Now that's only for moving up and down. If there's an issue of the printing being right or left, one way or the other, or horizontally, that would not be able to address that. Okay. And let's get back to our payments and checks window. Unbeknownst to many of our users, there's a handy go-to button right on our payments and print checks window. This will take you right to the depositor bill so that you can review it, edit it, etc. So let's grab onto our deposit from Century Furniture, and if we click the go-to button, Design Manager goes all the way out to our vendor invoices, deposit and operating expense window, existing tab, and position us right to that entry. So again, we could review it, we could void it if it's incorrect, we could even edit it and make any changes as necessary, etc. And that brings us to another topic. Notice our pay with option here. You can always select or tell Design Manager how you imagine you'll be paying for this particular entry with the pay with option. In this case, it's pay with a check. That's why it's on our payments and print checks window. You'd also have any of your configured credit card accounts as well. So if we know it's going to be on American Express, we could just select that. Or if I've already paid it with my Amazon Visa, I would select that payment method as well. But there's an interesting feature in your Design Manager Pro Cloud that we call our AP, or accounts payable payment types. Now, besides the ones we already have offered, a check and our 2 credit card accounts, you can create your own custom methods of payment on the company information accounts payable type window. So let's hop over there, back on our company information and settings, and we'll go to our AP payment tab. And there is our entry for a check. As I touched upon earlier, in accrual accounting, when we record a bill from a vendor, the amount's maintained in our accounts payable liability account, and it remains there until a check or other method of payment has been generated or entered. Processing payables in this manner, it allows the expense or cost of the bill or deposit to be recorded into a different period than your actual payment. So the bill is entered and it's waiting for payment. It's waiting as a liability or something that the company owes on your balance sheet. Now, all such transactions go through a single accounts payable account, but we allow you to categorize bills and invoices prior to payment using these account payment types. What does all that mean? Well, common uses for creating accounts payable payment types would be you want to group or associate all of the bills that you usually pay for through your commercial online bill pay for your checking institutions. In other words, if Bank of America allowed me to pay bills through their website, I may want to associate or categorize all of those bills when I'm entering them. You may also know that you're going to be paying bills on our American Express or Amazon Visa. You haven't done so yet, but you want to say, I'll pay this later with a credit card. Some other instances where there may be various divisions within your company, and you want to categorize all the bills coming in as commercial design or residential design or for the showroom, etc. So you have a way to really classify or categorize all of your bills and almost associate your own accounts payable groupings. Oh, it is important to remember, there's no need to make a payment type for your credit cards. We already have those. Just by creating credit card accounts, they're going to appear on our Pay With menu, as we just saw when we edited our bill from Century. We only need a payment type if we want to input the bill and associate a credit card payment at a later date. And we'll see that as an example momentarily. Okay, so if we did want to make a payment type for paying later with our Visa, here's how we do so. We click the Add button as indicated by the green plus sign, and that gets us to our very simple accounts payment type window. Type or description. What kind of verbiage would you like? Well, let's just call it later. In other words, pay later with our Amazon Visa. And then the default payment selection. Here, you're going to see all of your asset bank checking accounts and all of your credit card accounts as well. So we'd want to switch this to our Amazon Visa, as it's going to be a very convenient tool to indicate that the bill has been paid with our Amazon feature, as we'll see real soon. And if we click OK, we've created our later with our Amazon Visa. I can also control the order or precedence these are going to appear on our Pay With menu. If I want my option for a check to always be first, I can simply select it and use the up or down arrows so I can order how all of those entries appear on our Pay With menu. Now, I've already entered an operating expense for our monthly Verizon bill, but I haven't yet posted it. So if we go to our accounts payable frame, bills and invoices, there is my operating expense for Verizon waiting to be posted. Let's go ahead and edit it. And now on our Pay With menu along the bottom right, there's our entry for a check, but we also have our later with Amazon Visa. I haven't actually paid it with my Amazon Visa yet, but I'm going to soon. So if I select the later with Amazon Visa and click OK, I can then post our Verizon bill. And now, if we go back to our payments and checks window, we can see there is our Verizon bill waiting for payment, and the Pay With is later with Amazon Visa. I can actually filter my payments and pricks check window, which can get quite lengthy if I have a lot of outstanding bills. So for my clarity and convenience, I could say, hey, I only want to see entries for that I'm going to be paying or I'm paying right now with my Amazon. From here, I can go ahead and actually indicate to Design Manager that, you know what, I'm going to call Verizon, I'm going to go on my Verizon site and actually pay the bill with our Amazon Visa. To do that, we can use another tool. Let's select or tag our Verizon bill, and now we'll use our credit card button along the bottom. What that does is it gets us to our Select Payment Account window, where we can input a lot of easy information. First, what fiscal month are we going to be paying the bill? Defaults to the current fiscal month, but that can be changed, of course. Since I associated our Amazon Visa account with our later with Amazon Visa accounts payable payment type, that's what's being defaulted for our Pay With selection. The payment date. Now you can either manually enter that and it clearly defaults to today's date, but of course that could be changed to the point where the charge actually occurs or what have you. Or you could use the option for use the pay due date of each transaction. When that is selected, obviously the pay date is gone and the payment due date will be used as the indicated credit card payment date as well. If we click OK, we're actually going to generate a payment processing list. It'll list the payment type, there's our Amazon Visa, the fiscal month, who did it, and the bills that are being paid. I could print out a copy or save or export a copy as well. And the very handy feature here is I'm actually going to close and I have to process this payment list. It's another acknowledgement of truly indicating payment for all of these bills by our Amazon Visa. And if we click OK, I no longer have any bills associated with our later with Amazon Visa payment type, but I do still have plenty that I'm planning on paying with a check. And now on our credit card window, if we go down to our Amazon Visa, there's our Verizon bill being paid on that account. Okay, let's take another simple example and categorize all the bills that we pay usually through our online bill pay and to do so, we'll make another payment type. So we'll go back to our company information and settings, our accounts payable tab, click our add button, and let's call this online bill pay. We'll leave the default payment to our main or primary cash checking account, and we'll click OK. I prefer to keep my check payment type at the top, so again, we can just go ahead and use the up arrow, and we'll see that we can keep reordering all of our various payment types. And of course, I could edit if I wanted to change the title from a check to something else, or if I noticed I had a spelling error in my online bill pay, I can use the edit button as indicated by the pencil to make any changes. Or if I want to associate the online bill pay with the different checking account, I can edit each payment type in turn. And if one no longer becomes used, if I cancel my Visa, Amazon Visa account in the future, I can delete one as well. And now let's go back to our payments and print checks window, and we can use our online bill pay option. So let's grab our bill from Century Furniture, and now we'll use our pay online option. Very similar to our paying with credit card procedure that we just saw. On our select payment account, we're going to have our fiscal month and the designated pay with account. We'll go ahead and use a payment date of today's date. Click OK. And now I'm simply processing my payment list using my asset bank checking account rather than our liability credit card account that we saw in the previous example. And again, I could print out a copy, I could save or export a copy, and then go ahead and process the fact that we paid that Century bill online. So then it drops off our payments and print checks window. And in this case, now it will be seen on our checkbook window for our cash checking account. And there it is. One more option. There's another function where we can quickly record payment that we processed online if we don't have an online bill pay, or if we actually have a payment to the vendor that we wrote a hand check for. We can use the hand check wire option along the bottom toolbar. So let's say that we have our deposit for Philip Jeffries. If we click our hand check wire, we tell Design Manager, was it actually a check that we wrote out? If so, we would enter the check number, the check date, and tell Design Manager which account we're paying from, along with the default fiscal month and any transaction description that we'd like. If we actually paid it online, or any other electronic version, in fact, if we gave a debit card, we could use the wire transfer option as well, and that's even easier. By selecting that, all we have to input is the transfer or payment date. Let's say we paid it on the 24th, the period, and that came out of our cash checking account. ATM payment. If we click right here, we're now going to close or drop our Philip Jeffries payment, and that of course also would be seen on our checking window for our primary cash account, and there it is. Okay. Also, finally, if we go back to our bills and invoices for our vendor deposit invoice and operating expense window, as we're entering in all of our new bills, that pay with option, there's our check, there's our online bill pay, there's our later with Amazon, and our 2 credit card payments as well. We also have our hand check wire transfer here. So as long as I'm using any payment type associated with an asset checking account, that'll be available for me. So if I knew I paid this with my debit card, or if I wrote a check, I can enter that information while I'm putting the bill in itself, really saving us an entire step. So the same information can be entered while you're putting the bill in itself. And with that, that brings us to our end of our discussion on payments of our invoices in Design Manager. We went through a whole variety of different payment methods, including traditional check printing, using that wire transfer hand check window, using the credit card and pay online features on our payments and print checks window. We even discussed a few lesser known features in Design Manager, like the edit amount function, the handy go-to button, the account payable and accounts receivable payment types, and more. And with that, I thank everyone for joining the discussion today. I hope you attend another one of our free webinars in the near future. Take care and have a great day.